Welcome everyone to the Fintech Mobile Disruption webinar, where you will find out everything you need to know on how to lead the pack in mobile fintech. So it's amazing because this is going to be an hour, and after that, you're going to be just as successful as these other people. So hold on to your hats. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to start by introducing the guests for our panel today. First off, Balazs from Transferwise, where he is the engineering lead for European expansion. Maybe you want to tell us a little something about yourself, Balazs.
Hey, happy to be here. One fact about me that nobody would guess these days, that in another life I used to be a kickboxer, and I won 2 kickboxing World Cups.
Okay, that's something to keep in mind if the discussion gets heated later on.
That's why I only take webinars these days.
I think that's a good call. Welcome. We're very glad to have you. Then next up, we have Mariano, who is both a tech lead at Venmo and a Flutter GDE.
I can have a fun fact. I was working nothing related to this. I was customer care for mobile companies, so picking up the phones and complaints, and then I shift completely to software engineering and then fintechs and stuff. So that's a fun fact.
Welcome, great to have you.
Thank you so much.
And then last but not least, Giorgos.
Giorgos. Yeah, that's great.
From Cyprus.
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Giorgos. I'm from Greece originally. I live in London now, and I'm a software engineer myself at heart. Fun fact about me. Well, actually, I'm gonna say what says here. What's a fact about me? Nobody will guess. I had no one ever guessing my age with zero knowledge and just by looking at me. Never happened. So
I think.
Can we try it now?
Please do.
42.
45. Okay, close.
Oh, I got you. I was going to say 44, but I was fair enough. Yeah, I'm good with ages.
Welcome, everyone. Just very briefly about me, because nobody's here to hear from me. I'm Rick. I'm VP of Growth at Bitrise. Bitrise is where you do CI/CD for mobile. Fun fact about me is that I once spent a summer trying to become famous in the Netherlands by participating in game shows. And I managed to get into and win 2 game shows in a span of like 2 months. It did not result in me being famous whatsoever, unfortunately. All right, so what we're going to do today and why everybody's here is to ask some questions, hopefully answer some questions, and learn some things, right? And what we're going to try and touch on is the developer experience, the competitive landscape, and a little bit about release strategy, specifically for finance and banking on mobile. Because I know we have a lot of people in finance and banking in the audience, and I think everybody will recognize and agree that doing this for finance and banking is different. And that brings us to our very first question. So as a developer, or maybe somebody involved in mobile technology, how does working in a space like finance and banking that's traditionally heavily regulated and just functions maybe slightly different than a lot of other verticals, how does that differ? How is that different than other fields of mobile development? Anybody want to take a stab?
Yeah.
I think sorry.
No, go on.
I think in general, what this means in the regulated industry, that there are processes where you cannot fail, right? In particular, in fintech and banking, it's called KYC, for example. You have to be able to identify your customers. You have to know If they are doing something wrong, you have to check them for anti-money laundering. You have to ensure that the funds that you're moving are safe. You have to do fraud checks, and these processes always have to work. And if you have an outage, you have to notify the regulator, and there are very severe consequences. And this made these industries kind of risk averse.
Giorgos, I think you wanted to add something there.
Yeah, I think you covered most of the stuff, but overall you have to be compliant, and you have to be also auditable as well. And with that, that's the only difference. In my case, you need to have some guardrail in place, and I think that's what Balazs just mentioned. In addition, also testing is different. We found out testing. I have worked in probably 30 different apps in my past. The testing we have to do in the banking industry, in the fintech, is completely different than the way we do it because of all the things we mentioned earlier. So testing in production, for example, is completely different. You can't just do the same things you do in a social app, for example, or something else. Yeah, but following best practices, automating processes, you shouldn't be different than any other industry. You should aim for perfection anyway. It's not different as a software engineer.
I can add some 2 cents. I would say that something that maybe is different, or maybe fintech apps cannot get the PaaS, is if you get something sensible, like sending money to a specific person, or something that it has a fee related to, and if the text is way too small or is not prompted correctly before doing the action, technically that person can sue the company, can sue that fintech and say, hey, I wasn't aware that there was a fee. I wasn't aware that this mistake will lead me into losing, I don't know, $100, and that could lead into a lawsuit for the company. So everything the UI related to an app that you do as a developer, you have to, sometimes it's already to you, but you have to be aware that decisions that you make, or even if you implemented it something and which ended as a bug, and that bug is not showing the fees, that could lead into a massive lawsuit for a fintech. So I think that's one of the main difference as a developer, to be conscious about those actions when you implement a new feature. You have to be really careful about those specific details, like fee related and everything that it actually impacts and money to the user about doing an action.
Maybe a follow-up question that you should probably answer on a personal note, because it's more of a personal question maybe. Do those restrictions, do those foster creativity? Because in a lot of creative roles, and I think I actually consider engineering a creative role in almost any case. Having restrictions kind of forces you to be creative in finding solutions that work within those restrictions. Is that something you experience?
Yeah, I would say that's also a general rule. Even if you see social media, like in Twitter, for example, you have just certain amount of characters or different video social medias that you have a small amount of seconds. I would say that those restrictions could be time, could be space, could be, I don't know, the size of the phone and stuff, that you need to crop all the information into a small device or something like that. You need to be really mindset and really focus on the user experience or the UI that you present to the user, because you can show it in a way that is easy to do and it's easy to show, and doesn't impact the old banks and stuff that you always have this small fees, small letters, or having to read a 200 lines of a complex policy that only a lawyer can understand. And you need to prompt the users, because sometimes a lot of the new fintechs as a product, they release to 13 age old pretty much people to give the first debit card, parents. They do that happen in South America a lot. A lot of people is not in the back system, and they need to give a debit card to their sons or nephew or something like that. But you need to know that there's a lot of things related that for a 13-year-old, it's maybe not in their mind. If you pay something, you will have a fee, and they need to understand that they will losing money in a transaction and they don't know why, but it presented in a way that it can understand, either as a user experience or as a UI, presented in a small app that you don't have a lot of space to show a lot of stuff. And also have a small amount of actions in order to the user find it useful for this app and not to choose a different fintech, for example.
Is that a sentiment you share, Giorgos, Balazs?
Yeah, in my case, I believe creativity can be enabled with many ways. Constraint is one of them. I mean, you at the end of the day, you have an objective always. Your objective is to, like I said, be compliant, be auditable, have secure processes in place. So you'll find your way around it, no matter what.
Then moving on. So one of the things we did, partly in preparation for this webinar, is we did a ton of research into finance and banking apps in general. We wrote a report that you can download somewhere. Just go to the website and you'll find it. And one of the interesting things there that you find is that in almost every app store, the vast majority of the highest performing apps are from companies that have been around a decade or less. While, especially if we're talking banking, that's an industry that used to be dominated by these sometimes centuries old companies. So why are these younger companies performing this much better?
I can take that one. I would say you get a lot of stuff. First of all, the old century banks that you have, they already have an image. They already have a website. They already have a lot of stuff that they planned during the years, not just 10 years, but maybe 20, 30 years, from the image that they wanted to show to the users, the way they present it when they go through the bank, the way when they created the website. And when they reach this mobile era, there's like, but we already have a website. Why don't just scramble the whole thing on a phone? And that's it. They don't want to really spend a lot of money because that's the way they've been doing it for like 100 years. So why change it now? But for a lot of fintech is the first thing they will have is the name and maybe the image of like the logo or something like that. They don't have anything. So having nothing, they have the power or the privilege of doing everything. They can do the best way they can. They can check every single competition. It's like, this company did this company did that, this company doesn't have Face ID, this company doesn't have the Touch ID. We can actually implement and make a better user experience. We can have a more, and depending on the audience, we can make it young. Like all companies, they normally don't tailor to young people. So the fintechs, if they really want to cram those like 15, 20 millennials, centennials, all those people, they really know that they really like a better image. They really like graphics and stuff in the app. You wouldn't think in the past having like a small animated people like walking into your app. For an old bank, that's like that's for kids. That's not for users. We don't want that. That's not the image that we have. So I think it's part of like a lot of the stuff. Like the old school people, they think still the old way. Like new people, because they go like Silicon Valley, because they can play around with the product, they have more freedom into choosing, and they don't have the bureaucracy of a huge bank to approve something that it could take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. This one have the privilege of doing it in days, months, making changes, user feedback, and they implement it in the next release. They just go fast, because competition also drives you to go fast as well.
I agree with everything. Less red tape and bureaucracy. This is what I found. They release often. They release really fast. Something that big banks, they might have started doing now, but I think they're a bit late in the game. Now they might catch up, but digitalization and digitization, whatever, they're not very up for it yet. And also they're not mobile first, which is many fintechs are, which gives them an advantage on mobile, of course.
I think that there are many aspects of this question. The biggest one, I think, is that fintechs appear when there are, let's be diplomatic, there are some underserved customer needs. So the apps and the solutions there are not so good. And then the only way that fintechs can prevail is if they build something that is 10 times better than the alternative, right? So there are these new companies who have these really high expectations for them, and they really understand what the new generation of mobile users want. in finance in particular, the idea of convenience completely changed. So what it meant to be a convenient bank 10 years ago or 20 years ago was that you walk on High Street and you have your branch of your bank there, right? And you can you go there and do business. Now what we want is we want everything available on our phones. We trust companies that are not physically present in our countries. We trust them with our traveling. We trust them with renting apartments, whatever. And this transformed the expectations on the finance side as well. And these new players understand that. And why they're more efficient is they don't have that baggage that banking has, right? They don't have the legacy systems. They have a much more consistent tech stack. But the key thing here is how do you keep your tech stack consistent as a fintech, right? Because there are two ways. You can do it the banking way, where you have a committee, right, who decides what technologies you can use, or you can do it the modern way, where you have autonomous teams and you trust your engineers to choose the technology for the problem. And this is what we do at Transferwise. We trust the engineers to find the tools because we trust the engineers to put the customer first, the customer problem first, and put it before their technology preference. And this is how we ended up with our tech stack, which is almost entirely on JVM. And that enables us to have real weak code ownership, where any engineer can go to any system and do a change. And that comes with great productivity.
Yeah, following to that one, I would say that's a really good point of what the developers really wanted for the banking as well, because those developers normally are between the age of 20 to 30 somethings. So they really use the internet for a lot of stuff, like buying on e-commerce and all the stuff. And they want this convenience and simplicity that this e-commerce are giving it to them, but not the banking system. So it's like, why can I have, like, I don't know, I buy a product, I buy a mobile console, and it's going to be in my house the next day. Then why the banking of applying for a service is taking me a week? That makes no sense. And if you think about how complex one is, delivers something to your house, doing massive stuff, and the other one's like doing a paperwork, that's it. It should be like, in matter of fact, instantly. So developers having that mindset is like, okay, if I want to work in this fintech, I can give the feedback of this cannot take a week. Like, this is a small process, should be instantly processed by a cloud machine that it makes all like ability, clear your PIN, or send you a new car or something like that. It needs to be automized because it cannot take like a human process of reviewing, checking everything. You can do a lot of, like, nowadays ID validations with your camera, all the stuff that in the past was like, again, manually done. Now you can do with your camera, with your smartphone. It's like super simple to do it nowadays. And that drives a lot of changes as well to the fintechs, and not the old banks that they still like I say, they have this old mindset of how doing stuff. Like mobile first and developers, they have this idea of like, no, we want it now. We want all these changes and we want to make it fast. So they'll have in everyday's development, they will put that into mindset of the product as well.
It's interesting because I even saw somebody commenting about iterative improvement versus like designing big long-term projects. That in the research, we also found that if you're a younger company, you release 40% more often, like the frequency is 40% higher. And 40% already sounds like quite a lot, but when you think about that being a compounding, it's like compound interest, right? I'm 40% faster, and I'm 40% faster again, and I'm 40% faster again. And as long as everybody thinks about the end user and making the improvements the end user wants, then you're going to get ahead fast.
Yeah. There's also one thing, just to close this. I mean, big companies and banks, right? You hear them talking about agile transformation, and they're going digital. Now, a fintech, a young company, it is born agile, so they have it in the DNA. They're born lean. Like every small startup is a lean startup these days, and I think that's where the advantage, and that's where the iteration happens fast, and all the changes are very lean. So we don't have all the baggage as well in the ways of working. Well, big companies, they, it takes a lot of time and effort to transform a whole, like Barclays, an organization like Barclays, into the agile ways of working. And I'm not talking about frameworks, I'm just talking about agile, right? It's a lot of effort and it takes years. A young company is born agile, straight away, out of the box. They think agile, they lean. So that's another advantage.
Yeah, and the other one you can add to that one is that what a fintech is hiring people, it's people who are already been in the whatever mobile or web development for a while. So when you hire a CTO, when you hire staff developers, they already are in the mobile development for 5-10 years already. And for a bank, all of a sudden they need to have a IT team, but they don't really know. Their CTO maybe is still doing COBOL and all these old technologies that some banks, to be honest, they still use nowadays. And even South America, there's a lot of banks who still use this old COBOL. That's why you have like 60-year-old developers who, please continue in the company, don't leave, because the whole system will crumble. But the new technologies, they use like Node.js or they use Python or whatever. It's like different stuff where more modern, we can get a lot more developers. But again, those developers were already mobile developers before joining a fintech. It's weird that it's like your first time you join in a fintech, because there's a little bit more complexity. You don't want to jump straight up to a fintech as a developer. You maybe start with your own products, internship in some companies, and then you land into a fintech. And for all banks is the other way. It's like they need to figure out what's a CTO and what's a mobile developer. What is this thing about Kotlin and Java and Objective-C that they need to figure it out. So that will take longer, and to get the right people to get there. And maybe even younger developers is like, should I go to this all bank one, which is, I know how all banks have this kind of image to everyone's mind. There is like a lot of bureaucracy stuff, or I will go to this fintech, which maybe has free meals and beanbags and I don't know, things that people like in Silicon Valley. So they would lean to fintechs and not to the all banks.
I think it's probably safe to say that that speed of iteration that younger companies possess, because they were born agile, or they were born from mobile. One of the things that it allows them to do relates to this next question. That's a nice segue there. Being fast allows you to respond to changing user behaviors and changing user requests quicker. And in the research I referenced earlier, the report, one of the things we found is that there is a very, very, very strong correlation between App Store rating and install rate. I spent like a decade in mobile gaming, so I kind of knew this before we did the report, but there's this very strong correlation. And there's not just a correlation on the user acquisition side. I think for traditional banks, especially where somebody's already on another platform and you want them to download the app, and they're confronted with like a very low rating, that's an incentive to start shopping around. So it could even impact churn. So the impact of all of this is probably not up for discussion. What is up for discussion is, what do you do with that feedback, and what do you do with those reviews?
User feedback comes in many ways for us. We do consider user feedback is App Store reviews, Trustpilot reviews. Any surveys we do is user feedback. Cross-reporting is also, a sort of feedback as well. So we take it very seriously, and we monitor, we follow each one of them, so we don't let it slip through the cracks, and we try to resolve issues as fast as possible. Especially things that we can resolve. Some stuff are app-related, technical issues. Some other stuff are not technical issues, and there's another team dealing with that. The technical stuff, again, it's good to have a short release cycle and be able to release fast as well, and often. So the shorter release cycle you have, the more issues you will address. In addition, there's quite a few times where user feedback led items to be added in the roadmap, because there's high value requested multiple times by members, specific features, and we do add them in the roadmaps. We do take because this is keeping the members happy, we'll have indirect and other indirect effects. So we do act on them. We don't sit on them.
Yeah, the other thing about fintechs is they normally are, I would say sometimes not even mobile first, they're mobile only. So being their only way to get the access to the bank, you will lead to, of course, more downloads, but you need to make sure that, okay, if this is the only way for users to get into our product, it needs to be a good product. So user feedback is something they really need to put focus on it, but they also, I'm pretty sure they're super present on social media, so they get a lot of feedback from everywhere, not just the ratings on the app. But for the all banks, they're really married with the home banking because they've been doing it like since they start. So having a mobile app is just use the home banking. They don't really care. They don't normally recommend the app. They say just go to the home banking and do the whole thing, or just call in the phone. And normally people who normally use that, they have that mindset. They don't complain directly to the app, like the ratings. Maybe they do, or like put 1 stars, like this app is awful. But they will complain. They will call on the phone and say, like, hey, I got an issue with X and Y. And they will say, like, go to the home banking. I will guide you through. That they cannot do it. Maybe at the same time, it will be awkward doing from the phone and have the speaker and all the stuff. So I think that's one of the correlations of why the all banks have low ratings, because it's not the main focus having an app. They have the main focus on the home banking or their physical banks. And so they don't care really too much about it. And they don't care too much about the complaints, because the complaints they can take about phone calls and stuff. But a lot of these apps, all the complaint and feedback they have inside the app, because they have a chat. They can chat with someone there. So they need to make sure that all the experience is good one. And that could shift also someone put in a 1 star to a fintech and change it to a 5 star because the experience was so good, even complaining, because a lot of people revert that decision complaining just because they were heard, they were listened, and they make that change. Because it happens in a lot of products, even with hardware. You can have a crap hardware, but the other side would get the feedback and someone understand the issue, and it's just like, just return, we're really concerned, we're deeply sorry, and all the stuff can shift completely the rating of an app or a product, just because of they really focus on having the like consistency inside the app, or the experience of even complaining.
Maybe specifically on App Store reviews or App Store ratings, do you gate that information? Is there a process in place where it's curated, goes to a PM, and then the PM decides what to do with it? Or is it something the entire company is engaged with? How much of a role does it play?
I would say it's a whole company for us. Everybody's engaged with this and everybody inputting. But yeah, and it's also created from specific teams as well. Like, they do, we do follow up on reviews, on the App Store reviews more specifically. And we try to solve the issues like on the spot. Sometimes, it's not technical, right? This is just a complaint. So people have a really bad service, and like Mariano said, there's no other way to complain. And you just put a bad review in for the iOS app, which actually, in fact, is not really relating to the app or the Android app. It's just, your account is taking longer to open or requested more paperwork, whatever, and then you complain about in the app. But it's not really a complaint about the app specifically. It's about about the company or the process.
Yeah, in our experience, user feedback in the App Store is a really strong opinion. It's a really strong feedback. It's either you're the best thing that ever happened to me, or you shouldn't be allowed near a keyboard ever again. So what we do, we take customer feedback really seriously, and the whole company is organized around customer feedback. So we use the NPS scale and the NPS comments, and the whole company is structured around price, speed, convenience, and trust. And each of our teams, these are really small teams, like 3 or 4 or 5 engineers, they have a KPI that they have to move, and they automatically get this input from the customers, from NPS, from the App Store, from different channels. They get it from our customer service, right? We track if you had a problem on the mobile, and then this will be shared with the team that can help solving the problem.
Okay, you also have a lot of Normally in fintechs, a lot of marketing focus on these viral social media eras. So if something is a bad review, but it's something really specific that you can shift around and make it viral, so it has a good impact in the company, or the other way around, it's like a 5-star, but it like the comment is something really specific that you can use it and promote it as part of marketing, that could shift, and like a lot of people would download your app and all of a sudden you get a better reviews just because of that action. I remember working on a mobile game company there in San Francisco that I remember a kid was playing with I think it was 70-year-old woman who were like coast to coast in the States, and they were like playing all the time to the Scrabble game and to the mobile app, and marketing took that one. They saw the reviews because they knew about the reviews and the chats and the social media, and they just gathered them around. So they paid for the trip for them to see each other, and that was like a massive hit in marketing. That shift even improved the ratings on the app as well. So for fintechs, they can play around with those stuff. They can use like a social cost that maybe someone is raising money through their account in the fintech and then moving the money around. That could be like a new product maybe, or that could be something that is social impact. And they can use that as marketing and improve the ratings and improve the image even of the company. You don't normally hear those stories from like all banking and stuff. Normally you hear the bad stuff, like they're evil and something like that. But now for the fintech, they try to be cool with the kids and they try to be up to date with all the social media stuff and trends.
I think Balazs also made an excellent point about the reviews either being great or awful. I think everybody that's worked in mobile knows the smile of app reviews, where everybody gives you either a 1 or a 5. And what you really want is it to skew to the 5, but you're always going to have a smile. Sometimes the smile's not good, and then you make it good. Okay, moving on to the next question. So we talked about this a little, and we're referred to these a couple of times, but the incumbents, like the big banks, the 200-year-old financial institutions, for some of you, these are not just competition, or they're even not competition at all, but you actually work with these companies. And maybe we can talk a little bit about the challenges you experience in working with these organizations, more so than competing with them. So specifically, maybe culture and tool set. Do you see any differences there when you interact with these types of organizations?
We have a product that is called Transferwise for banks. And what that means is we realize that the fastest way to solve the problem of international money transfer is if we can help banks move to the future, and the future is using Transferwise, because right now over 30% of our transfers are instant, and banks are really far away from that. It takes like 4 or 5 days to do an international money transfer, and it costs like 10 times more. So what we did was we built an API, and we also have tools to help them integrate it into their apps. And the biggest problems they have from a technical standpoint is not to integrate with our apps, because they have the mobile in place. They have shiny new systems as well where they can integrate it. But the problem is that they have those mainframes that we mentioned before, where maybe only 1 or 2 people understand how that system works, and they need that to retain customer data, for example. And that seems like something that scares them away from a technical perspective, because they don't know how to get around that. So that's definitely something that they have to work on. And another thing I would say is the ability to make a decision. You know, sometimes they have to go through so many layers that it's really hard, and it's really ineffective compared to a company like Transferwise, where if we know that something is important and we have to make a decision, we get people in the room and we will have a decision.
Yeah, I think to add to this, the problem with working with this with big banks or big organizations like financial organization is you are the dependency of them. And what I keep saying is you are as slow as they are, and you can be only fast as they are. So that's a direct dependency. So you will never be faster than how they are, and they're not fast, obviously, right? You know that, and that's why you need to choose the takeaway, because you're asking for a takeaway. Is choose your partnerships very carefully and with lots of research to avoid future problems.
Maybe directly moving on to a follow-up question that is related. I'll go back to the other one later. So sometimes you work with these companies, but they're also definitely the competition in a bunch of different places. Are they catching up? Because if we can go into the App Store and look at the rankings and see that 70% of the companies there probably haven't been around as long as most people have worked at these traditional companies, they know something's up, right? And they're making moves and they're making acquisitions and they're developing new things. Are they catching up? And how do you stay ahead?
I could take that one. I can see from a personal experience being in South America, we're not a country that there is a lot of people in the bank system. There's not a lot of people who had a credit card even. So a lot of fintechs, they wanted to try to solve that issue, making it simple for a lot of people to have this, like, again, super simple, having an app, taking a picture, ID, and they will send you the credit card. That for a lot of all banks, they will see your history of like buying, having debts and stuff. And there was just like, you're not eligible for a car and stuff. They're like really picky. And because we also have a lot of economic crashes and issues, banks, they really want to be secure. But fintechs, because they already are in a way of like, it's a little bit tricky. It's like, we need the people. We really need customers, because if we don't have this product, it's not going to success. So maybe they will put their risk in the minimum of like, okay, we will give you this card, but it's not a credit card. Maybe it's a prepaid card, but it can use international, because they know they will use it for, I don't know, playing games online. And then traditional ones, you need to request an international card to make this international transactions. And they will give you, but they will not be credit, so they don't have this amount of people that maybe take debt with a credit card, and they will not pay it, and that's where the risk coming from. If it's using a prepaid, if you don't have the money, you're not going to use it. But you will have this international one, which is compatible with every single online system and service. And you can do whatever you want, and even have discounts inside the app and all those different things. And you see that at least here, the all traditional banks, I will say even up to this year, they're making the change. One big bank that we have here in Argentina, they're shifting the whole, they would not have, I think in the coming 2 years, they would not have any physical banks anymore, and they will shift everything digital, but they were doing now. And the fintechs, they start happening here, I would say 3 years ago, and they, from the get-go, they have everything digital. They were like super fast. Like, I have the fingerprint to get into my account and all those stuff. I was like, whoa, this is really clever. This is really secure as well. And if I do a transaction, I will get like a push notification with the things that I actually purchased. And then the other one, I don't know if someone copied my credit card. I don't know, because when I get to see, because I don't get into the home banking every single day, maybe I will figure it out in 2 weeks. And when I try to use my card, there is going to be blocked because someone just copied my card. And the other one, they will push me a notification. It's like, hey, this is a weird transaction. Is it really you? And you will accept it or not. So all these things, security, mine, all the stuff, the old banks, they're trying to catch up. They're slightly putting a new features and all the stuff that the fintechs had it from the get-go. So they're trying to catch up. Some do better than others, and some others just slow, like maybe updates every couple of years, like really UI changes and feature changes. But depending on how old the bank system is, and you can even notice in the home banking, if the home banking already looks bad, they're not going to do a quick shift into mobile. But the ones who really notice that change, they're trying to catch up. I'm seeing catch up here in South America. At least this year, they really pushing into catch up every single fintech.
Yeah, I think if you look at banking, how it started is we trust bankers with our money, right? To keep it safe, right? And also when we need money, we borrow money from them, and then they it sort of expanded into thousands or like hundreds of different products. Now they sell insurance, they give you bank accounts, they do international money transfer, and that's what caused that the underserved customer needs, right? Because you cannot achieve greatness in so many different areas. And if you take international money transfer, for example, Transferwise is only 10 years old, and we move more money cross-border than any other of these incumbents, even the 100 years old, right? So it seems unlikely that there's going to be a bank who's going to beat us in international money transfer, because we have 2,200 people only focusing on this problem. So what the banks can do to catch up is to recognize the winners in the fintech scheme, right? Take their value proposition and add it to the bank's value proposition. You don't need to leave my bank to use Transferwise. I can give it to you in my app. You don't need to go there and register, right? Because I know eventually you will leave me, because they're faster, more convenient, and much cheaper. So that's the strategy that I think is going to transform banking and fintechs into one.
Yeah.
So these institutions have been around for a long time, right? And they've been around for a long time for a reason. There's something there that they're doing right, or they have some kind of they have some characteristics that apparently work. Is there anything there that you wish you had? Like, what's the biggest thing in these incumbents where you're like, well, it would be handy if we could have that same benefit?
Yeah,
Their customers.
Yeah, I will point it out that the old banks, they normally have this customer ranking. If you're like a really good customer, you have your own personal specific employee from the bank that is going to take care of everything you do. And if you take a lot of money, they will do everything for you because you're like this loyal customers. And fintech, everyone is the same. Everyone has their accounts, everyone has the stuff. You may have a little bit benefits in the amount of money that you can transfer and all the stuff, and maybe a little bit better products. But maybe because everything is digital, everything is from the app and stuff, they don't have like this 40-year-old people, 50-year-old people who already have their own manager account and stuff, their old bank's account. So they trust so much into these old bank accounts that's why they stuck into the JPs and all the stuff and the old banks, because everyone managed their assets for the past couple of decades. So why would they shift into this new fintech that they don't even know if they're going to be surviving in the next 5 years? If they survive for 200 years, can I trust this new baby just coming up and with an app? They don't know. But younger people, they blindly trust, I guess, to the fintechs. But people who already have huge amount of assets, maybe they will not trust a fintech at all.
I think I heard two things there that are interesting. One being the trust that having a centuries-old company brings with it, like it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And it's weird because everybody forgot the financial crisis of like a decade ago for some reason. I don't know what happened there. We're just pretending it didn't happen. But we trust these institutions. And one thing that's interesting, and I hadn't really realized that yet, is that fintech or maybe mobile first finance and banking hasn't really developed this strategy around whales. And that's probably my gaming background kicking in. But we definitely developed a very high touch strategy around whales. Then maybe going back to the question I skipped, because it was actually pretty interesting. And again, well, it all kind of relates. So this relates as well. As younger companies, you're all up to a degree cloud natives. right? Because nobody that founded a company in the last couple of years did so by buying a ton of hardware. And that has a ton of benefits that we all know about: scalability, less maintenance, etc. At the same time, in your specific vertical, specifically for finance and banking, these heavily regulated industries, it can be challenging because there are concerns around security, there are concerns around data control. What are your thoughts on the trade-offs there? Is there a trade-off?
My humble opinion on this is that it's kind of clear that if you want to build a global business, today the most efficient way to do it is in the cloud. That seems to be the future. But obviously, the regulators, it always takes time for them to get used to innovation and technology. And that's fine because that's their job. The biggest pain point in finance is comparing the cloud to on-premise data centers, is that regulators think that keeping the data in the country will mean better protection, and it gives them safety that whenever they want to, they can just come in there and look into the data. But they can have the same insight if they have the legal reasons, even if the data is in the cloud. So these are interesting discussions that we have to have with regulators, and slowly convince them that you can have better protection in the cloud with much better reliability even than with the on-premise data centers.
Yeah, you can also argue that the old bank system, normally employees are long-term employees. So for fintech, a lot of people can go back and forward. Developers, maybe they're a year, maybe they're like 2 or 3 years, but you don't have this 20, 30, 40-year-old people working on for those tickets in the bank. But in the old bank systems, you do have those stuff. You do have people who are like in the same bank for the past 20, 30 years. And they have all these paperwork that they've been doing. All of a sudden, like having this breakfast of fintech, and they're just like, do I have to relearn everything from the scratch? Now I don't have to use papers anymore. I have to do everything from a computer. Do I have to point it out and train all your employees? So being this cloud first for a lot of people and for fintechs is really easy, is the future clearly, and that's going to continue to be doing, because a lot of the process and transfers and stuff can now be transferred instantly because of these reasons. Don't have this all paperwork and stuff and making sure that the transaction is correct, and maybe waiting like 3, 4, 5 days, like some like all banks takes to make a transfer. Even local transfers in Argentina, if they don't know, they can, if it's the first time you transfer to a different bank, I'm seeing like 2, 3 days for a local bank transaction, which is why, which with the fintech is instantly, you just send the money and the other one get the push notification, they either send the money. So it's a future. I don't see any trade-off of being cloud, and all banks will shift everything to that. You also have in a lot of different countries that the national banks are really have a strong presence than the private ones. So shifting a public one into cloud, into all the stuff, it's not easy, because there are people in the public sector, and you know how the public sector is. They just, there you go, slow. Bureaucracy is 10 times higher than even private bank accounts and companies. So they will eventually do the shift. But I think, yeah, I don't see any trade-off of it.
Yeah, and to add something, there's quite a few, I mean, I think banks, they already do that. I know for a fact there's a big bank in the UK that they are moving their infrastructure in cloud, one of the big banks, and the benefits, I mean, it's focus, right? You gain in focus. You don't have to have a team maintaining everything. I mean, this goes without saying. So your team can actually focus on your value proposition, not on things that they do matter, but somebody else can do it better, probably.
Maybe a related question. taking into account like shifting the responsibility to do things that you can move away from the team, like maintaining hardware and shifting that to the cloud. Are there other things or other areas of development where you look to automate or move those like non-core activities away from the development team so they can actually focus on working on the project?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. KYC is one of them. Many companies, they outsource everything. They have is buy-in versus in-house built it, and not everything contributes to your value proposition. So why do it yourself? Like when you can buy it. So it's up to the business basically to decide. And some stuff, yeah, you can do it. Some other stuff that don't require lots of effort, maybe it's, you can save some money there and don't just build it instead of buy it. But I would say yes, that you can still find everywhere. In every area, you can find things that you can buy.
Yeah, even completely automated, but semi-automated is when you want to release a product. If you think from the old bank account, not a fintech, if you want to release a product, you really put in the effort on it. So you put in and risk in the money into maybe releasing a new product. You're going to do this TV advertising, online advertising, and then get the feedback if it's a really good thing or not. But fintechs, you can have this A/B testing that you do with a small percentage of the user testing a new product and seeing if they land automatically to the new like settings and stuff in a new product. And we test with them and to see, like, okay, this feature is really going to take it or not. You shift into 5%, 10%, 100%. Everyone shifted automatically. No one has to push a new update to the app or anything. It was completely server driven and automatically. So I think that's one of the other things that you also have, and to keep that in mindset. It's like, okay, you can have a specific build so you can automate and send them to the QA. So you don't have to do that process. Maybe every PR that you created is going to send a build to the QA so they don't have to request from you. It's like, what's the new changes? What are the new stuff? Also, like I say, A/B testing all the stuff, you can actually test with the users in a automatic fashion that you could just shift percentage and they will deliver automatically to the users. So there's a lot of stuff that you can automate and deliver to users or even internally in the company, from builds, from features and all the stuff that the fintechs already have that in mind. And that's one of the privilege and things that what they're making at low risk and a lot of points that for all banks is a higher risk.
A related question I saw pop up in chat that I really like to touch on, like at the end of this. I know we're running close to time. We talked a lot about how you or mobile fintech specifically behaves differently than a lot of traditional banking, but also has to behave differently than vanilla app creation. And I think it was, let me find the name, Mark Cordova, that asked, are there any tweaks to the agile methodologies like Scrum that you make to better fit in with fintech? Something around release strategies, feature flags, maybe how you approach rollbacks.
Yeah, I can take. Sorry.
No, you go.
I would say everything needs to be in a feature flag. Everything, because you never know what's going to happen. And when you handle people money, make sure that if something breaks or something is not delivered or the money goes from somewhere but it didn't land in the other one, that you can turn it off quickly enough to don't propagate to everyone and create that issue. So in a lot of apps, they can have this benefit of, okay, if this feature doesn't work as expected, we can wait a week to make a new release and fix this issue. But for the fintechs, they don't have that benefit of waiting a week for something, because a week could cost them millions of dollars. So feature flag for everything, making sure that a feature can be turned off, even if it's an old one. Adding new features can easily broken all different features that, again, because you handle money, you need to make all this amount of regressions to make sure that you didn't broke anything. Because maybe, I don't know, you have a system that you can send money to one person, but maybe you implement one that you can split the money to, I don't know, 3 people. But what happens if there is a bug and you send the same amount of, like, the complete amount to the 3 people, and then you all of a sudden you lose a lot of money because of that, because it wasn't a regression checking if the old system still work, and it split the money correctly and send the 3 payments. So there's a lot of that figured out in mind, and also a lot of the policies and making sure that compliance with everything before even releasing, and even if it's they're almost secure and there's in the code base, they're still behind a feature flag or something until they finally get the result that says, like, okay, we can turn it on now. But let's just put again, A/B test 5% until you reach the 100%. So a lot of stuff could be done in advance. The user would not have it until they get all the approvals correctly done. Or sometimes the opposite. You're waiting and waiting and waiting for the approval in order to actually deliver and even code that feature at all.
Do we have a deadlock? Because I'm waiting for you. You're waiting for me. Yeah. So my 2 cents on this is we are really goal oriented, right? So what we want to achieve with all these tools and processes is that every developer is safe, feels safe when they're making a change. So we have a developer experience team in the company that sends out the survey to developers to understand if they're making a change, how comfortable they are with their tests, and making sure that they're not going to cause a severe incident. And it's really interesting that the Agile Manifesto is 19 years old, but sometimes people still talk about Agile as this is like a medicine that you take and you're going to be super fast. Sometimes Agile is going to slow you down. But I think the biggest benefit of these Agile processes is that you can take baby steps if you want to, and your tools enable that. So if you're not sure where you want to take the product development, you can go really slow, and where you're going to end up with is the product market fit, the product that the customers really want. I think that's the main benefit of using these tools and enabling people to go in tiny steps, and that's always going to be much more safe than doing 1,000-line long pull requests and do 2 releases in a year.
I would just add, I agree with everything you both said. I would just add, it's good to follow. So how do I put it now without advertising it? So there's a book called Accelerate. I'm pretty sure many of you have read it. And these 4 DORA metrics, the software delivery metrics, you need to find what's best for your company, that drive, that push, that move the needle in these metrics. And this can be Agile, this can be anything really. This can be actually waterfall if you want it. I don't know. And everything you mentioned here from Mark, release strategies, feature flag, rollbacks, that's not tweaks. That's actually a nice things to do, right? That will enable everything else, especially lead time to changes, deployment frequency, and just have it open and reading it. So I wouldn't call them tweaks to Scrum, because Scrum is not something you apply, it's not a blanket you apply everywhere, it's the same. You know, it's like the Spotify model, it won't work for everyone. You have to find your own model. It's the same thing with Scrum. You'll have to adjust it the way your company is built. So otherwise, it's not going to work. How to do that? You need to have some North Star, and your North Star should be your metrics. Whatever they are, we are using these 4 metrics with other things to get there.
So I think the message, the main message that I got maybe from all 3 of you is deploying or releasing with confidence. Right? When you hit that button, you know with a certain amount of certainty what's going to happen, and you have some semblance of control to roll back any mistakes via feature flags or
fix forward. Or fix forward, right? So because on mobile you can't roll back, you have to fix forward. So you need to have like a fast releases. Otherwise, imagine if you release something in the wild and it takes like 3 days to actually release a hotfix. That's catastrophic. But yeah, especially on mobile, you have to be very, very confident because of this. On backend and I guess on web, you have the flexibility of fixing something like really faster actually. But automation is the key here, right? So the more things you automate, especially around testing, that's what will give you the confidence.
I really enjoyed talking to you. I hope I learned a lot. I hope the audience learned a lot. If you're not on Bitrise yet and you're in the audience, then a way to release quickly and with confidence is by employing mobile CI/CD. And if that's of interest at all, you hit the button. Well, I'm mirrored. You hit the button there, and you can actually book a meeting. Thanks again, all of you. We'll be in touch to send you one of our special webinar speaker plushies that are, I don't want to oversell it, but it will definitely be the best plushie you own. All right, thanks everyone for attending.
Cool.
I hope to see you all again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much
Cheers,
for
bye-bye.
inviting.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.